The day had started like any other for the young girl who lived in a quiet countryside town. It was the kind of place where nothing traumatic ever happened, where people knew each other by face, and where the fields stretched far enough to make anyone feel small. The girl was walking home from school, taking the long way as she always did. She liked this path because it was peaceful, and she could take her time without anyone asking where she was going or what she was thinking. The late afternoon sun was soft, and the air smelled like dry grass and dirt after a long, warm day. She walked along the narrow trail that cut across the field, humming quietly to herself, dragging a stick across the ground just to make shapes. While walking, her days usually felt slow and predictable, and although she never complained about it, deep down she wished something exciting would happen in her life, just once, something she could remember forever. But she never said it out loud, because wishes like that felt too big for someone like her Dot. As she reached the middle of the field, she suddenly froze. Something strange caught her eye on the ground ahead. It was a thin, glowing line, stretching lightly across the dirt. At first, she thought sunlight was reflecting off something metallic, but the glow didn't fade. It stayed bright, soft, almost like a faint trail made by a sparkler. She blinked a few times, thinking maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. But no, it was real. Curiosity pulled her forward. The closer she got, the brighter the glow became. She crouched down beside it and touched the dirt. The ground felt normal. The glowing wasn't warm or dangerous. It was just there. She looked around, but the field was empty. No one else was nearby. No cars, no animals, not even a bird in the sky. The strange glowing trail felt out of place in this simple quiet world. Dot, she stood up and followed the trail slowly, each step filled with curiosity and a slight nervousness. Something inside her whispered that whatever was waiting at the end of this trail was going to change everything. She didn't know how she knew that, but the feeling wouldn't go away. The trail led her behind an old storage shed that belonged to a nearby farm. The shed had always looked abandoned, with broken wood panels and a roof that seemed one strong wind away from collapsing. No one ever came here. It wasn't the kind of place where you expected to find anything alive. But today was different. Dot, as she moved around the shed, she noticed a small shape curled up near the corner, half hidden behind tall weeds. At first she thought it was a wounded bird or maybe a stray kitten. But when she got closer, she stopped, breathing for a moment. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a kitten. And it definitely wasn't anything she had seen before. The small creature was lying completely still, its tiny body rising and falling in weak, slow breaths. It had soft scales that shimmered like glass when the faint light touched them. Its wings were folded close to its sides, but they didn't look like any wings from Earth. They were thin and almost transparent, with glowing lines running across them like veins of light. Its tail curled around its body, and its small claws looked more delicate than dangerous. Its eyes were closed, and it looked exhausted, almost lifeless. The girl's heart tightened. Whatever this creature was, it was suffering. She slowly knelt down, afraid to scare it, even though it looked too weak to react. "Hey," she whispered softly, her voice trembling a little. "Can you hear me?" The creature didn't move, but one of its ears, or what she thought was an ear, twitched slightly at the sound of her voice. She felt a strange pull in her chest, as if the little creature was calling out silently for help. Her fear faded, replaced by instinctive concern. She noticed dried dirt and small cuts on its skin, as if it had fallen from somewhere or been dragged across rough ground. The glowing pattern on its body dimmed every time it breathed out, like a light slowly fading. She looked around again, hoping someone else might be there who could help. But the entire field was silent. It was just her and this unknown creature. She gently reached out and placed her hand near its head, not touching it yet. She wanted to see if it would react. After a long moment, its eyelids fluttered open just a little. Its eyes were soft and shining, not threatening at all. There was fear in them, but also trust, like it knew she wasn't there to cause harm. "It's okay," she whispered again. "I won't hurt you." Then something happened that she didn't expect. The creature tried to move its head closer to her hand. It looked like it was seeking comfort, as if it understood she wanted to help. That small gesture made her heart ache. She slowly touched its skin. It was warm but weak, and the light under its scales grew slightly brighter when her hand made contact. Like her touch gave it a little strength. She realized she couldn't leave it here. If she walked away now, it would probably not survive. She didn't know what it was or where it came from, but she knew she couldn't live with herself if she left it to die alone behind an old shed. She carefully took off her scarf, a thick one she always wore in the colder months. She wrapped the creature gently inside it, making sure its wings weren't bent. The creature didn't resist. In fact, it curled into the warmth, letting out a faint sound that almost sounded like relief. She lifted it slowly. It was lighter than she expected, but she could feel its weak heartbeat through the fabric. She cradled it close to her chest as she stood up. A sudden worry washed over her. How was she going to explain this to anyone? What if someone saw her? What if her family didn't let her keep it? Would someone try to take it away? But when she looked down and saw its tiny face resting against the scarf, all her fears softened. Right now, this creature needed her. Everything else could be figured out later. She started walking toward home, moving carefully so she wouldn't jostle the creature. With every step, she felt more protective, more determined. She didn't know what she had found. She didn't know what it meant. She didn't know that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. All she knew was that she had made a choice she couldn't undo now. As she walked through the field, she noticed the glowing trail had disappeared completely. She looked over her shoulder to check, and it was gone, like it had never been there. Only the quiet field remained. It almost felt like the trail had appeared only to guide her to the creature, and then faded once its purpose was fulfilled. Wind picked up slightly, making the tall grass sway on both sides of the path. She tightened her hold on the wrapped creature, as if the wind itself could steal it away. The creature shifted lightly in her arms, letting out another faint sound, softer this time. It almost felt like it was trying to communicate, but it was too weak. The walk home felt much longer than usual. Every noise made her nervous. The sound of a car passing in the distance, the rustling of leaves, even a bird taking flight. She kept glancing down to check on the creature, afraid its breathing might stop at any moment. But it kept moving gently, giving her small signs that it was still holding on. When she finally reached her home, she paused outside the door, heart racing. She knew she couldn't let anyone see what she was carrying. She waited, listening for voices inside. The house was quiet. She slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside, closing it softly behind her. Carefully, she walked straight to her room, making sure her footsteps made no sound. Once inside, she locked the door and set the wrapped creature on her bed. It lay still, breathing slowly, but its glow seemed a little stronger now. She sat beside it, unsure of what to do next. She wanted to give it water, maybe clean its wounds, but she had no idea how. What if normal water wasn't good for it? What if touching it the wrong way made things worse? But even with all these worries, she felt a strange calmness. She didn't understand why she felt so responsible for it, but she couldn't ignore the feeling either. She reached out again and gently brushed her fingers along its tiny forehead. Its eyes opened halfway, looking at her with a softness that made her feel like she had known it for longer than a few minutes. She smiled a little, even though she didn't fully understand what was happening. "You're safe now," she whispered. That night, she didn't know she had just taken the first step into something far bigger than she ever expected. She didn't know that this fragile creature wasn't just unusual, it was extraordinary. She didn't know that saving it would change her life, her world, and her heart forever. All she knew was that she had found something precious, and she wasn't going to let it go. After bringing the tiny creature into her room, the girl didn't know what to do first. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed it gently on her bed. She wanted to make it comfortable, but she didn't have blankets small enough, and the scarf she had wrapped it in seemed like the only soft place for it to rest. She sat down next to it, her eyes tracing its delicate wings and the faint glow under its scales. She had never seen anything like this in her life. The glow pulsed faintly as it breathed, like it was a living light. It was beautiful and fragile, and for the first time, she felt a kind of responsibility she had never known before. She wanted to help it, but she didn't know how. Her mind raced with questions. What was it? Where had it come from? Could she feed it? Could she even touch it safely? It seemed to trust her, but she couldn't shake the worry that she might do something wrong. The creature shifted slightly, moving its tiny wings and looking at her with wide, soft eyes. Its gaze made her heart ache. It didn't speak, didn't make a sound, but somehow it was communicating through those eyes, a mixture of fear, relief, and trust. She decided to start with the basics. She fetched a small bowl of lukewarm water from the kitchen, careful not to spill any. Bringing it back to her room, she placed it near the creature and gently nudged it with her finger. The little being sniffed the water, and after a moment of hesitation, it lapped it carefully with its tiny tongue. She watched, amazed, as it drank. Relief washed over her in waves. At least it wasn't dehydrated. That meant it could survive a little longer. That thought gave her hope, and she noticed the wounds. There were small cuts along its side and tiny bruises on its wings. She didn't want to hurt it, but she had to clean it somehow. Her fingers shook as she gently touched the edges of the wounds. She didn't know if normal water was enough. She didn't know if using soap or alcohol would hurt it. She tried to be as gentle as possible, wiping the dirt away with a soft cloth. The creature made a faint noise, almost like a sigh, and pressed closer to her hand. That small movement made her smile. She realized it was trusting her. It trusted her completely, and she felt an overwhelming need to protect it. Hours passed. The girl didn't notice the time slipping by. She made a small nest for the creature, using blankets and pillows, careful to create a warm and soft space that felt safe. She sat beside it, talking quietly, even though she didn't expect an answer. She told it about her day at school, about the field where she found it, and about her small, quiet life in the countryside. The creature blinked slowly, almost like it was listening, and when she reached out to touch its head again, it leaned into her hand. That tiny gesture filled her with an unexpected warmth, a sense of connection she had never felt before. It was more than just compassion. It was a bond forming between them. As the evening grew darker, she noticed something strange. When the creature moved, small sparks of light would flicker in the air, faint but visible. At first, she thought it was her imagination. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. The tiny sparks floated above its body like fireflies, hovering briefly before fading. She didn't feel scared. Instead, she felt a strange sense of wonder, as if this creature belonged to a world she had never known existed. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with curiosity and awe. She wanted to know more about it, to understand what it was, and how it had ended up in her field. That night, she stayed up longer than usual, just watching the creature. She had forgotten about dinner, homework, and even the time. The world outside her room didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was this tiny, glowing being and the bond they were starting to share. Occasionally, the creature would move its small wings, letting out a soft, almost musical sound. It wasn't loud or alarming, just soft and soothing. She realized it was communicating in its own way. Every movement, every sound seemed intentional, as if it was trying to tell her something. She didn't understand the words, but the emotion was clear. The creature trusted her, and she knew she had to protect it. No matter what dot, she began to feel an emotional connection, unlike anything she had ever experienced. When the creature looked at her, she felt a sense of being understood, even though it didn't speak a human language. It was as if they could feel each other's emotions, a silent understanding that required no words. She smiled, gently stroking its tiny head. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I'll take care of you." The creature's eyes glowed faintly brighter, like it was acknowledging her promise. Over the next few days, she became more attentive. She noticed little details she hadn't seen before. Its wings had intricate patterns that shimmered under the light. Its scales changed color slightly, depending on its mood, brighter when it was content, duller when it was tired or hurt. She tried to study it carefully, making notes in her notebook, sketching the patterns she saw. Even though she didn't know what kind of creature it was, she wanted to understand it better. She wanted to learn everything about it. It wasn't just a fascination. It was love, pure and simple, growing stronger each day. The girl also began to realize that keeping the creature hidden would not be easy. Every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, she froze, worried that someone might discover it. Even small noises from her parents or neighbors made her heart race. She would gently cover the creature with her hands or blankets, hoping it stayed calm and quiet. But despite the tension, she felt a sense of pride. She was protecting something precious, something unique, something that had chosen her in a way that no one else ever had. One evening, something unexpected happened. The creature's glowing patterns started to shift in a strange way. Tiny lights danced across its body like a moving map, forming shapes she had never seen before. She leaned closer, eyes wide in wonder. For a brief moment, she felt like she was witnessing a language, or at least a form of expression that went beyond anything human. The creature looked at her, its gaze filled with urgency and curiosity. She realized that it wasn't just weak or helpless. It was intelligent, aware, and perhaps even trying to communicate. She felt both amazed and humbled. There was so much about it she didn't understand, yet she knew she had to protect it. As the days passed, she settled into a routine. She gave it water, cleaned its small wounds, and watched over it carefully. The creature, in turn, seemed to grow stronger, though slowly. It moved its wings more confidently, lifted its head higher, and sometimes even stretched its tiny legs. Each small improvement filled her with hope and relief. She began to imagine what it might be like when it fully recovered, though she didn't know what that would mean. Would it stay? Would it leave? The questions lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside for now, focusing only on the present. The girl also started noticing small changes in her surroundings. Occasionally, objects in her room seemed to move slightly, though she dismissed it as her imagination. Lights flickered unexpectedly, and sometimes she thought she heard soft whispers when no one else was around. She didn't feel scared, but a strange sense of awe settled over her. This creature was extraordinary, and its presence seemed to affect everything around it. She felt lucky, even if she didn't fully understand why. One night, she couldn't sleep, She sat by the creature, brushing its tiny wings gently. The soft glow filled the room with a warm light. She whispered stories to it, telling it about her childhood, her dreams, and the quiet life she had always known. Though it didn't respond in words, it nuzzled against her hand, its glowing patterns pulsing softly. She realized that she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time, she felt that she had a true companion, someone who needed her as much as she needed it. By the end of the second week, the creature was noticeably stronger. It started moving around the small nest she had made, exploring cautiously, testing its wings. Each new movement made her heart race with excitement and pride. She felt like she was watching a miracle unfold. Every small victory, every tiny improvement, strengthened the bond between them. She wasn't just caring for it. She was learning from it, discovering patience, empathy, and courage in ways she never had before. Even though the creature was still small and fragile, it had begun to trust her completely. It would nuzzle her fingers, curl into her hands, and sometimes even let out tiny sounds that seemed almost like laughter. She laughed too, sometimes out loud, at the sheer joy of being part of something so incredible. She didn't know where this creature had come from or what it was, but she knew one thing for certain. It had chosen her, and she would never let it go. As the night grew quiet and the world outside her window slept, she felt a deep sense of purpose. This little being depended on her, and she would protect it with everything she had. The bond they had formed was more than friendship. It was trust, love, and an unspoken promise that neither of them could fully explain. And though she didn't yet understand the full story of this tiny creature, she knew that her life had changed forever. She had found something extraordinary, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. The days turned into a rhythm, a quiet routine that the girl and the small creature shared together. Every morning she would wake early, careful not to disturb anyone in the house, and check on it. She made sure it had water, that its little nest was warm and soft, and that it had a comfortable place to rest while she went about her day. She found herself thinking about it constantly, even when she was at school or walking through the fields. Her mind was always returning to the creature's soft glowing eyes, the way its wings fluttered lightly, and the tiny movements it made that were so full of life. She couldn't explain why, but she felt responsible for it in a way she had never felt for anything before. By the end of the first week, she noticed that it was getting stronger. Its wings, once fragile and folded tightly against its body, began to stretch more, showing small, delicate patterns that glimmered faintly in the sunlight. It began to make noises, soft little coos and chirps that sounded almost like it was trying to speak. She would lean close, listening carefully, and respond with quiet whispers or gentle reassurances. Though the creature could not speak human words, she felt as though it understood her perfectly, and she began to understand it in ways that went beyond language. But as it grew stronger, it also became harder to hide. One afternoon, while she was playing quietly in her room, the creature tried to hop from one side of its little nest to another. It misjudged the distance and fell softly onto the floor with a tiny thump. The girl gasped and rushed to it immediately. It looked at her with wide eyes, but it was unharmed. Its wings twitched nervously, and she could see that it was trying to stretch them fully, to fly, even if just a little. She carefully lifted it and set it back into its nest, speaking softly the entire time. "It's okay," she said. "You're safe. You don't have to be afraid." The creature's glow brightened slightly, like it was reassured by her words. That evening, she tried something new. She opened the window slightly and let the breeze drift into the room, wondering if it would enjoy the fresh air. The creature hesitated at first, but then it inched toward the light. Its wings twitched, and it made small movements that looked like stretching, testing the space around it. She watched, amazed. It was learning, discovering, growing in ways she had never imagined. She realized she wasn't just helping it survive. She was teaching it about her world, showing it kindness, safety, and trust. And in return, it was teaching her patience, love, and the thrill of seeing something grow and thrive under your care. One afternoon, she noticed something that made her pause. The creature's glowing patterns were changing in a way she hadn't seen before. They flickered like tiny lights across its wings, creating shapes that almost seemed intentional. She leaned closer, fascinated, trying to see if it meant anything. It almost looked like a map or a sequence, moving from one spot to another. She tried to make sense in it, sketching the patterns quickly in her notebook. For hours she watched, trying to interpret the glowing designs. It was both mesmerizing and confusing, but she felt certain it was trying to communicate with her in its own way. As the days passed, the creature became more active. It began exploring its little space more confidently, hopping from one part of its nest to another, testing its wings, and even making small leaps onto her lap. She would laugh quietly at its attempts, her heart swelling with pride. She began leaving little pieces of soft cloth or small objects in its nest, curious if it would interact with them. Sometimes it would nuzzle them, sometimes it would push them gently around, and sometimes it would seem completely uninterested. Each reaction gave her more insight into its personality, its moods, and the way it thought. She realized it was intelligent, far more intelligent than she could have imagined. But as the creature became stronger and more confident, it also started to change in ways she didn't fully understand. Its wings were larger now, and the glow under its scales became brighter and more complex. The flickering patterns seemed almost alive, moving across its body with intention. One evening, as she sat beside it, the glow suddenly pulsed in sync with its soft noises. She felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if the creature was sending her a message, a feeling rather than words, something she could sense deep in her chest. She didn't know what it meant, but she felt the importance of it. Something about it was bigger than her small room, bigger than her small life. The girl began to research quietly. She went online after school, searching for anything that might explain what she had found. She looked through articles about rare animals, glowing insects, even unusual birds, but nothing matched what she had discovered. Nothing came close to describing a creature with wings, scales, and glowing patterns that seemed alive. The more she searched, the more she realized she might be dealing with something extraordinary, something she had never even imagined. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement because she had found something incredible. Fear because she had no idea what it was or where it had come from. Sometimes, when she wasn't looking, the creature would do things that surprised her. She would glance up and notice that small objects near it had shifted slightly. A pen on her desk might be lying at a different angle, or a paper would flutter as if moved by a gentle breeze that didn't exist. She started to think the creature might have abilities beyond what she could understand. She didn't feel scared, only amazed. It was as if her small room had become a place of wonder, a secret world where something magical had entered her life. One evening, the girl noticed a pattern she couldn't ignore. When she held the creature close, it seemed to respond directly to her emotions. When she was calm, the glow under its scales pulsed slowly and evenly. When she was anxious or worried, it flickered rapidly, almost like a heartbeat. She realized that the creature was sensitive not only to its surroundings, but also to her feelings. It was as if it could sense her, understand her, and react to her mood. She felt a deep connection, a bond that went beyond words or gestures. She spent hours just observing it, sometimes sketching, sometimes talking quietly, sometimes just holding it, and letting it rest against her chest. Each moment strengthened their connection. She began to notice details she had never seen before: the way its wings would quiver when it was curious, the way its small tail would twitch when it was excited, the subtle changes in its glowing patterns that seemed to reflect its emotions. Every small action fascinated her. Every tiny sound made her listen more carefully. She realized that this creature wasn't just surviving. It was learning, growing, and thriving under her care. But as its confidence grew, so did the challenge of keeping it hidden. She became increasingly aware that someone might see it. Even a small sound in the hallway made her freeze, worried that her family might come to her room. She didn't want anyone to take it away, to hurt it, or to make it leave. Every day was a delicate balance of caring for it, keeping it safe, and learning more about what it was. She felt the weight of responsibility, but it wasn't heavy. It was a responsibility she wanted, a duty she embraced with love. One night, something incredible happened. The creature's glowing patterns shifted suddenly, brighter than ever, and it began making soft, rhythmic sounds that almost seemed musical. She leaned closer, mesmerized. The lights moved in patterns across its body, forming shapes she couldn't understand. She felt a sense of awe that made her chest ache. The creature looked at her as if it were trying to show her something important. Though she didn't know what it was trying to say, she felt the urgency and the meaning behind it. It was communicating in a way that was beyond words, and she felt the responsibility to understand it. Even if it took her a lifetime. As she watched, she realized that this creature had changed her life already. She had grown more patient, more observant, more caring than she had ever been before. She had learned to feel deeply, to connect, and to appreciate life in ways she hadn't imagined. And she knew, without fully understanding why, that this was only the beginning. This tiny being, small and fragile though it was, had the power to open a new world for her. A world filled with wonder, responsibility, and unspoken connection. By the end of the third week, a creature was noticeably stronger. It moved more confidently, exploring the small space she had prepared for it. It nuzzled her hands, played with little objects she had placed around its nest, and seemed to respond to her emotions with more clarity. Every small victory filled her with pride. Every flicker of its glowing patterns, every tiny movement, every soft sound made her feel closer to it. She realized that she was no longer just a caretaker. She was a friend, a companion, and perhaps something even more. Their bond had grown beyond simple care. It was trust, love, and mutual understanding, unspoken but undeniable. She knew that she couldn't stay in her small, quiet world forever. She didn't know what challenges would come next, what dangers might appear, or what truths she had yet to discover. But she felt ready. She felt stronger, braver, and more alive than she had ever felt before. The creature had changed her life, and she had no doubt that the days ahead would be even more extraordinary. Together, they were beginning a story that neither of them could have imagined, a story that would test their trust, their courage, and the bond that was growing stronger with E. The days were no longer just quiet routines for the girl. Something had begun to change in the creature, something she hadn't noticed before. Its glow had become brighter, almost vibrant, and the patterns across its tiny wings were shifting in ways that seemed more deliberate, almost like a message waiting to be understood. She would sit beside it for hours, tracing the designs with her eyes, feeling the hum of energy that seemed to pulse softly from its body. At first, she thought it was just a beautiful light, but then she realized that it responded to her presence, her emotions, even the tone of her voice. She had begun to notice that when she was calm, the glow moved slowly and smoothly. When she was anxious, it flickered and pulsed rapidly. One evening, she held it close and whispered gently, I promise I'll protect you, no matter what." For the first time, the creature's wings twitched with what felt like a sudden surge of energy, and the patterns on its scales shifted quickly, forming shapes that she couldn't recognize. It was almost like it was trying to show her something: visions, feelings, or perhaps memories she could not fully understand. The intensity of the light startled her slightly, but it wasn't frightening. She felt a connection, deeper than she had ever felt with any living thing. Her heart raced as she realized that this creature wasn't just living. It was aware in ways that she couldn't comprehend. Over the next few days, she began to notice another change. The creature, which had once been fragile and hesitant, started to move with more confidence. It would climb gently onto her shoulder, stretch its wings in the open space of her room, and make soft noises that seemed almost like words, though she didn't understand them. Sometimes it would hover lightly, balancing itself with its small wings, and she would watch in awe, realizing that it was learning to control its body in ways that were almost magical. The room, once ordinary and familiar, had become a place of wonder, a space filled with light, life, and energy she had never experienced before. As it grew stronger, she also noticed that its health seemed fragile in other ways. Some nights, its breathing would become uneven, its glow dimming slightly, as if the warmth of its body could not fully hold on to the energy that pulsed through it. She would stay by its side, stroking its small head, speaking quietly to calm it, whispering promises of safety and comfort. "You'll be okay," she said one night, her voice soft and steady. "I'm right here. I won't let anything happen to you." Slowly, the glow would return, the light brightening and spreading across its wings, like it had been reassured by her presence. She began to understand that the creature needed more than food or warmth. It needed her trust, her care, and the bond they had formed. But as she observed it more closely, she began to realize something she hadn't noticed before. The glowing patterns sometimes formed shapes that were almost like pictures, tiny images of stars, planets, or vast landscapes she didn't recognize. She tried to follow the shapes with her fingers, tracing them gently across its wings. She couldn't be sure if it was a message or just an instinctive display, but the intensity of the images made her feel that it was trying to show her something important. She spent hours watching, wondering what they meant, and slowly a realization began to dawn on her. This creature was not from the world she knew. The thought both excited and frightened her. Could it really be from another place? Could this little being have come from somewhere beyond the stars? She remembered the strange glowing trail she had first followed to find it in the field, the way its light seemed to guide her. Could it be that this creature had a purpose, or that it had been searching for her? Her mind swirled with possibilities, each one more unbelievable than the last. And yet, every sign, every flicker of its glow seemed to point to something extraordinary. Her curiosity grew stronger, and she began to research quietly, looking through every book, article, and online post she could find about unusual creatures, meteor sightings, or unexplained phenomena. She found a report of a small, glowing meteor-like object that had fallen near her town the week she had discovered the creature. Nothing else matched the description of the being she had found, but her heart skipped as she realized there might be a connection. Could it have fallen from the sky, just like the report suggested? Could this tiny being be the same as what people had seen from afar, glowing and mysterious, traveling across the night sky? As she pieced together the information, she also noticed that the creature's condition sometimes worsened unexpectedly. Its breathing would become shallow, its tiny body trembling as if Earth's environment was too heavy for it. She held it close, whispering soft reassurances, trying to calm it, and each time its glow returned gradually. She realized she might not be able to keep it safe in her small room forever. She didn't know what it needed, only that it could not survive indefinitely in this world. Her worry grew, but so did her determination. She had saved it once, and she wouldn't stop trying. One night, as the wind rustled softly outside her window, the creature's glow shifted again. This time it was different. The lights formed shapes that almost looked like stars and planets, slowly moving across its wings in a flowing pattern. She leaned closer, holding it carefully in her hands. Her heart pounded as she realized that these were not just random shapes. She could feel something in them, an energy, a memory, a connection to somewhere far away. Her chest tightened with a mix of awe and fear. She didn't understand the full meaning, but she felt that it was trying to tell her something important. She whispered softly, "I don't know what you need, but I'll find out. I'll help you." The creature responded in the only way it could, a gentle pulse of light, a soft hum, and a flutter of its wings against her hand. In that moment, she realized that the bond between them was no longer just caretaker and creature. It was something deeper, a connection that bridged worlds, even if she didn't understand it fully. She felt the weight of responsibility more strongly than ever, but she also felt a sense of purpose that filled her with courage. As days passed, she began to notice faint signs that the creature might not be alone in the universe. Strange sounds sometimes echoed in the fields at night, distant and low, like humming or vibrating energy. She would listen carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. Could it be others like her creature? Could there be someone or something searching for it? She didn't know, but a quiet fear began to grow alongside her curiosity. She tightened her hold on the creature whenever it shivered or glowed brighter, feeling that it could sense her worry and respond to it. The creature also began to show more intelligence in its actions. It would explore its space with careful curiosity, testing boundaries, and sometimes using its tiny wings to lift slightly off the ground, almost hovering. She watched in amazement as it learned quickly, as if it was adapting to the world she lived in. She tried to teach it gently, showing it small gestures of encouragement, praising it when it succeeded, though it didn't understand her words fully. She could feel the mutual understanding growing between them. She was teaching it about her world, and in return, it was teaching her about courage, patience, and the wonder of life beyond the ordinary. Then came the night that changed everything. The glow shifted suddenly, brighter and more intense than she had ever seen. The patterns on its wings moved quickly, forming shapes she could not recognize. Her breath caught as she realized that it was trying to communicate something urgent. She held it close, whispering softly, trying to soothe it, but it wriggled slightly, moving toward the window as if drawn by something unseen. She followed its movements, heart pounding, and watched in awe as the glowing patterns became sharper, almost like a projection of images she could feel rather than see clearly. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was important. Something from beyond her world had arrived, or was arriving, and the creature was trying to tell her. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed close, holding it, feeling the soft vibrations of its body, the warmth of its glow, and the pulse of energy that seemed to connect them both. She realized that the world she had known, quiet, simple, predictable, was no longer the world she lived in. She had been chosen, or perhaps she had found something extraordinary by chance. Either way, she felt that the next steps would not be simple, that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. The next morning, she woke early, her mind restless with questions. She watched the creature, now calm, its glow gentle once more, and wondered about the future. She knew she had to find answers, but she also knew that rushing could be dangerous. She made a promise to herself and to the creature. She would protect it, learn everything she could, and stay close to it no matter what. Whatever lay ahead, mystery, danger, or discovery, she was ready to face it, because she had already experienced something incredible, the bond between a human heart and a life unlike any other. The girl woke to a strange, soft light spilling through her bedroom window. At first, she thought it was the early morning sun, but something about it felt different, softer, almost alive. She sat up slowly, blinking, and realized that the glow wasn't coming from outside, but from the creature itself. It was brighter than she had ever seen, pulsing gently like it had something urgent to tell her. Her heart began to race. Something was happening. She leaned closer, careful not to startle. The creature's wings twitched lightly, and tiny sparks of light flickered around its body. It wasn't just glowing. It was sending signals, moving in patterns that almost seemed deliberate. She could feel the energy vibrating through the room, a gentle hum that made the hair on her arms stand up. She reached out, touching its soft scales, and immediately a warm, comforting sensation ran through her chest. It was like it was telling her, "Come with me. It's time." The girl didn't know what that meant. She had taken care of it for weeks, and now it seemed ready to leave, or maybe it was calling something to her. She held it close, whispering, "I don't know what's happening, but I'm here. I won't let you go alone." The creature responded with a soft hum, nuzzling her hand and curling into her arms. Its glow shifted, brighter in some areas and softer in others, almost as if it were gathering strength. She didn't notice it first, but there were faint sounds outside her window, a low, humming noise that didn't come from any machine or animal she knew. She pressed her ear to the glass, heart pounding. The sounds seemed to be coming from the field behind the house, the same place where she had first found the creature. Something or someone was approaching. She glanced down at the creature, who had stiffened slightly, its wings flicking nervously. It seemed aware of the presence outside. "Stay calm," she whispered, her voice trembling, though she tried to sound steady. "I'm right here. Nothing will happen to you." The creature responded with a small, reassuring chirp, but the glow around it pulsed rapidly, as if it sensed danger or urgency. Her mind raced. Who or what could be coming? For it? She had thought for weeks that she was keeping it safe, that no one would ever find out. But now, it seemed, someone or something was aware of its presence. By late morning, she could see the source of the light outside. Across the field, a series of glowing shapes hovered just above the ground. They were tall and slender, unlike anything she had ever seen. Their forms shimmered and moved gracefully, almost like they were floating on air. The girl froze, holding the creature tightly. Its wings twitched, and it let out a soft, almost urgent sound. It was calling them or responding to them, and the girl realized, with a sudden, overwhelming feeling, that these beings were connected to the creature. They were its family or its guardians, or something even stranger. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know whether to feel fear or awe. She had cared for this creature for weeks, had watched it grow, nurture it, and form a bond that felt unbreakable. And now, in front of her, were signs that it belonged to another world entirely. She felt her chest tighten with a mix of sadness and hope. The thought of letting it go filled her with sorrow, but she also knew it was the right thing. It had a place to return to, somewhere it truly belonged. The creature stirred in her arms, glowing brighter than ever. It made soft sounds, almost musical, and lifted its tiny wings slightly. The glow expanded, forming a soft beam of light that stretched from its body toward the glowing beings in the field. The girl felt a strange warmth, a sense of understanding passing between them. Though she didn't comprehend the language or the shapes of the glowing figures, she could sense the gratitude, the care, and the reassurance they were sending. Tears pricked her eyes as she realized the creature was about to leave. She had grown attached, more than she had ever expected. Its presence had changed her life, filled her days with wonder, responsibility, and love she hadn't known before. And now, letting it go was the hardest thing she had ever faced. She held it close one last time, whispering words of comfort, of love, of hope. "Go," she said softly. "Be safe. I'll never forget you." The creature pressed its small face against her hand, its wings stretching slightly as the light around it intensified. She could feel the energy pulsing through her fingertips, through her chest, a connection she would carry forever. Then, with a soft, musical sound, it lifted from her arms. She watched, holding her breath, as it floated toward the beam of light connecting it to the figures in the field. Its glow intertwined with theirs, forming a dance of light that was breathtaking. She wanted to reach out, to call it back, but she stayed still, feeling the pull at its choice. It wasn't abandoning her. It was returning home, and in that moment, she understood the depth of their bond. She had given it life, comfort, and safety, and in return, it had given her trust, companionship, and the realization that the universe was far bigger than she had ever imagined. The glowing beings descended, slowly moving closer to the creature. They surrounded it, their light soft but powerful. The girl felt a surge of emotion, fear, wonder, sadness, and awe all at once. The creature chirped again, a sound full of love and reassurance, before leaning into the circle of glowing forms. It was as if it was saying goodbye, not just with words, but with its whole being. She could see the gratitude in the way it moved, the care in the patterns of light, and the connection it had formed with these beings from another world. The girl's heart ached. She had imagined many endings for their time together, but she hadn't imagined this one so beautifully heartbreaking. She had grown used to its presence, to its soft glow, its tiny movements, and the way it seemed to understand her without words. Now it was leaving, yet somehow she felt that it wasn't truly gone. The bond they had formed was eternal, imprinted on her heart in a way that no distance or time could erase. The light around the creature and the beings intensified, forming a soft vortex that shimmered in the morning air. The girl shielded her eyes against the brightness, feeling the warmth spread over her. When she looked again, the creature was gone, lifted into the sky by the glowing figures. Her chest felt heavy with sorrow, but also light, as if a weight had been lifted. She whispered a quiet goodbye, her voice barely audible over the fading hum of the energy around her. "Be safe," she said. "I'll never forget you." The beings lingered for a moment, hovering above the field, their glow softening. Then, with a gentle pulse of light, they disappeared, leaving the field empty once more. The girl stood there, stunned, her hands trembling, her heart pounding. The world felt quieter, softer, and somehow emptier without the creature beside her. She sank to the ground, tears streaming down her face, mourning the loss, but also feeling a deep gratitude for having been part of something so extraordinary. In the days that followed, she found herself thinking constantly about the creature. She walked through the fields, hoping to catch another glimpse of light, another sign that it was okay. Sometimes, in the soft rustle of the grass or the gentle glow of morning sunlight, she felt its presence. Though she hadn't seen it, she could sense it in her heart, in the warmth that lingered in her hands and in the quiet memories of its tiny wings and glowing eyes. She also began to notice small changes in herself. She felt braver, stronger, more open to the mysteries of the world. The experience had shown her that life was bigger, more wondrous, and more unpredictable than she had ever imagined. She had cared for something extraordinary, something beyond the boundaries of her everyday life, and in doing so, she had discovered a new depth of empathy, courage, and love. Though the creature was gone, the lessons remained. She remembered every small detail, the soft hums, the glow of its wings, the way it responded to her emotions. She held these memories close, knowing they would shape her forever. And in quiet moments, when the sun cast long shadows across the fields, she could almost feel it near, a reminder that some bonds transcend distance, time, and even worlds. The girl knew that this wasn't the end. She didn't know when or if the creature would return, but she knew that the connection they shared would remain with her forever. It had changed her life, opened her eyes to wonder, and taught her that love, trust, and courage could exist in the most unexpected places. And though the field behind her house seemed ordinary again, she knew that it had once been the place where her life had expanded into something far beyond the limits she had ever known. The days after the creature had left felt strangely quiet. The girl would wake up each morning, instinctively looking toward its little nest, only to remember that it was gone. The soft glow, the tiny movements, a comforting warmth, all of it had vanished, leaving her room feeling emptier than ever. At first, she felt a deep sadness, a hollow ache in her chest. She missed the gentle hums, the playful chirps, and the way it had responded to her emotions, as if it understood her better than anyone else. But slowly, over time, she realized that though it had left, the bond they shared had not disappeared. It lingered in her heart, soft and steady, like a quiet light that would never go out. She started spending more time in the fields, walking the paths where she had first found it. Every morning, she would wander slowly, her eyes scanning the horizon, hoping for a glimpse of its glow. Sometimes the wind would brush her face in a way that reminded her of its wings fluttering, and she would smile softly, feeling a small warmth in her chest. It was as if the creature had left little signs for her, reminders that it was still out there, somewhere, alive and thriving. She realized that part of her life had changed forever. She could no longer see the world the same way. Everything felt bigger, more alive, more filled with possibility. Even at home, the girl began to notice subtle changes. She had grown more patient, more attentive to small details, and more aware of the feelings of those around her. Caring for the creature had taught her empathy on a level she had never experienced before. She could sense subtle shifts in tone, small changes in expression, or even the quiet hesitation of a friend's movement. She began listening more carefully, speaking more gently, and noticing the world in a way she hadn't before. Though the creature had been extraordinary, it had also transformed her ordinary life in profound ways. One evening, as she sat quietly by her window, the sky turning pink and orange with the setting sun, she felt a soft tingle on her skin. She looked up instinctively and saw a faint shimmer in the distance. For a moment, her heart leapt. Could it be the creature? She squinted, holding her breath, but the shimmer faded into the horizon. She felt a mix of hope and longing, realizing that she might never see it again in the way she had before. But the memory of its glow, its tiny wings, and the bond they shared gave her comfort. She understood that love didn't always need to be seen to be felt. Over the next weeks, she began documenting everything. She wrote down her memories, sketched the glowing patterns she had seen on its wings, and described every sound and movement she could remember. Sometimes, as she wrote, she could feel the creature's presence in her room, not in body, but in the warmth and light that lingered in her heart. She realized that these memories were a gift, something she could carry with her forever. They reminded her that life could hold extraordinary moments, even in the smallest encounters. One afternoon, as she walked through the fields, she noticed something unusual. The grass near where she had first found the creature shimmered slightly, as if touched by an unseen light. She bent down, brushing her fingers over the blades, and for a brief moment she could swear she felt a pulse, a faint warmth, almost like a heartbeat. Her heart raced. Could the creature have left something behind? Or was it simply a memory of its presence, lingering in the world she had shared with it? Either way, she felt a quiet joy. She knew that the world was bigger than it had seemed, and that extraordinary things could touch life in ways she could never fully explain. In the following days, she noticed other subtle signs. Small glowing particles seemed to appear in the air at dusk, fading quickly before anyone else could see them. Sometimes she felt a gentle vibration when she held her hand to the earth, a sensation that reminded her of the creature's pulse. She realized that while it had left, it had not completely gone. Its energy, its life force, seemed to linger, and she felt honored to have been part of that extraordinary existence. It had left an imprint, not just on her heart, but on the world. Around her, life at school and home continued, but she carried a new sense of wonder. She began to notice things that she had overlooked before, the way light danced on the water in the nearby stream, the subtle changes in color of the leaves throughout the day, or the way small animals interacted with their environment. Every detail felt significant, alive, and connected. She realized that the world itself was full of mysteries, small and large, and that she had the ability to perceive them now because of the creature. It had taught her to see with more than just her eyes. She had learned to feel, to notice, and to understand in ways that went beyond words. Then, one quiet evening, as she sat on the porch watching the stars, she noticed something that made her breath catch. A tiny distant glow flickered across the night sky, moving with an almost deliberate pattern. Her heart raced as she recognized the rhythm. The flickers were not random. They pulsed like the patterns she had seen on the creature's wings. She realized, with an overwhelming mix of awe and longing, that it was calling to her, showing her that it was alive and that it remembered her. Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness this time, but of joy. The creature had survived. It had thrived. And somehow, it was reaching back to her, bridging the distance between their worlds. From that night on, she would often watch the skies, tracing the faint glimmers of light in the distance. She no longer felt sadness when it was gone. Instead, she felt connection, hope, and love that transcended distance. She had learned that bonds, like the one she shared with the creature, were not defined by proximity or physical presence. They existed in trust, care, and the memories they created together. Every soft flicker of light in the distance reminded her of those lessons, and she carried them with her wherever she went. Her days became filled with a quiet purpose. She started helping others in small ways, inspired by the love and care she had given the creature. She comforted younger children, tended to injured animals she found in the fields, and reached out to anyone who seemed lonely or afraid. Compassion she had learned from caring for the creature had become a part of her, something she could share with the world. She realized that extraordinary experiences often teach lessons that extend far beyond the moment itself, shaping who we are and who we become. One afternoon, while walking along a familiar path, she noticed something extraordinary again. A faint shimmer of light, almost imperceptible, drifted past her in the wind. She froze, holding her breath, and smiled softly. It was like the creature was saying hello, a small acknowledgement of their bond, a reminder that it had not forgotten her. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time in weeks, she laughed aloud, the sound echoing softly across the fields. Though she could not see it fully, she knew it was there, alive and thriving in its own world, and that knowledge filled her with peace. The girl realized that her life had been changed in ways she could never have predicted. She had discovered that care, trust, and love could transcend worlds, that connections could exist beyond physical presence, and that even the smallest creature could teach the largest lessons. The memory of the glowing being, its tiny wings, and the bond they shared became a source of strength, courage, and hope. It had shown her that life could hold unimaginable wonders, and that even ordinary days could be filled with extraordinary meaning not in time. She continued her life with a quiet confidence. She still visited the fields, still watched the skies, and still felt the gentle hum of the creature's presence in her heart. But she also lived fully in the world around her, carrying the lessons it had taught her: compassion, patience, courage, and love into every interaction. She knew that one day she might see it again, and that thought gave her a deep sense of comfort. For now she had learned to cherish the memories, the moments, and the bond that had forever changed her life. And though the creature had returned to a world beyond her own, she understood something important. It had chosen her, trusted her, and shared its life with her. That was a gift she could carry forever. Every soft glow she glimpsed in the sky, every gentle flicker of light, reminded her of that extraordinary being and the lessons of love, trust, and wonder it had left behind. She smiled, her heart full, knowing that some connections never truly end. They simply continue, quietly, beautifully, in ways we feel rather than see. The girl looked up at the stars that night, feeling the vastness of the universe above her, and she whispered, "Thank you. Be safe wherever you are." And though the sky was silent, she felt the faint warmth in her chest, the pulse of light in her memories, and she knew without doubt that the creature was listening, still connected to her heart across the distance. Of worlds, her life would never be ordinary again. She had learned that even the smallest, most fragile life could leave a lasting impact, and that love and care could cross boundaries she had never imagined. And in that quiet, starlit moment, she knew that this was only the beginning of a life filled with wonder, courage, and the extraordinary possibility of connection.